There's one thing that's always kind of rung true is, being present, not just, mentally, but physically being on site, in the field with the people, in the stores, on the construction sites. There's really no substitute, from being behind the desk or, um, to being in the field. Um, it's really tough to do your job staring at a computer all day. You can look at drawings and maps and blueprints and, send 100 emails a day, but, being there, seeing the work happen, catching the mistakes or, any errors and, watching for, any safety related items that some people may or may not catch. So I think that's one thing, no matter what role I've ever played in, it's been important.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. I cannot wait to get into it with today's guest. He has a wealth of experience in business and is dedicated to creating a positive working environment. He brings a unique combination of expertise and passion to everything he does. Additionally, he's a highly skilled contract negotiator and general manager with expertise in areas like inventory management, payroll processing, and policy analysis. His attention to detail and strategic thinking have helped companies streamline operations, improve efficiency, and enhance overall performance. His diverse skill set and dedication to continuous growth make him a key leader in any business environment. He is the Director of Facilities and Capital Improvements at Roach Bros Supermarket. Rob Cox, welcome to the show.
Wow, Jay, that was one heck of an intro. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me on the show today.
100%. Absolutely. Thanks for investing your time with us, Rob.
Absolutely.
So you've seen the show, you've heard the show. You can expect my question for you, right? So you have a plethora of experience. You've got all kinds of facilities experience and otherwise. And my question is, what's been your biggest lesson learned through the years?
Well, Jay, over the years, there's one thing that's always kind of rung true is, being present, not just, mentally, but physically being on site, in the field with the people, in the stores, on the construction sites. There's really no substitute, from being behind the desk or, to being in the field. Um, it's really tough to do your job staring at a computer all day. You can look at drawings and maps and blueprints and, send 100 emails a day, but, being there, seeing the work happen, catching the mistakes or, any errors and, watching for, any safety related items that some people may or may not catch. So I think that's one thing, no matter what role I've ever played in, it's been important, you know.
It's a great way to lead. It's a great way to be and to behave, I believe, as well. I think last time we spoke, you said you personally get to know most of the staff in the stores, and I think you have 20 stores. Is that right?
Yeah, we have 20 locations across 3 different banners. And, my previous role as a facilities manager, now director of facilities, I, got out a little more, but I try to get out to all the stores. I try to know, I know the managers, the assistant managers, they all have my cell phone number. They know how to text me, get a hold of me. I even know some of the department managers in the kitchens. The kitchen equipment is, my sort of forte from my food service background and my equipment repair background. So those are, things I kind of gravitate to. So I always, find the kitchen manager or they find me. And, it's important to get, what you need out of them. Sometimes they're not going to always tell the manager, the assistant manager, hey, my oven's broken, my dishwasher's making a funny noise. But, for some reason they see me and they're like, hey, this thing's squeaking or, this is leaking. And either I could take a look at it myself and, use my screwdriver or my tiny wrench and, fix it, or I could put a service call in for them. But, Also goes back. You got to, being on site, you got to be there, ask the questions. You got to just, kind of show up. So yeah, it is important to get out, every day.
How did you create that culture? Or I'm saying culture, right? It sounds like you have a really good culture and relationship with everyone. How did you create and foster that, and how do you sustain it?
So that sort of from like my other roles, I've been involved with service technicians and, convenience stores. It was a little tougher in my last role. There was so many of them. It was kind of hard to operate that way. But when I came in here, it was, February of 2020. So before, all the bad stuff happened right away. And there was really no other way to figure out what I was supposed to do. I had some training, but the person in my role, there wasn't a handoff. There was a little bit of turnover in my department. So there was no one to sit down with me and show me everything. So I just went out and started showing up and went to every store, made lists, started doing asset inventories to get a better idea of what we had. And again, talking to the people and just I felt like that was the only way to do it. And and no one had to tell me to do it. It just that's what I felt was right. And it's done me uh, pretty good so far. And I try to instill that in my team to make sure they're on site, doing all the things, running around, talking to people.
Well, you're a very relatable person. I know we haven't known each other for long, but you're a very relatable person too, and I'm sure that that comes across in every interaction as well. So good for you. Sounds like really good relationships built there.
Absolutely appreciate the words, Jay.
We talked about knowing your audience too, and I know you can definitely expand on this. I'd love it if you would. What do you mean by knowing your audience, and how does that manifest for you?
So, in a few roles that I've had, I've been lucky enough to work with some really good people, and not necessarily like above me or outranking me, but people that have had a lot more life experience than I have, especially at those times. And two people in my career have told me specifically those words: know your audience, know who you're talking to, knows who's in the room, know who's next to you, who's listening to you. Um, for instance, if I'm, trying to work on a multi-million dollar capital project to renovate a store, and I need more information in the bakery department, the bakery manager doesn't want to know how I'm ripping the oven out, getting the plumber out, the electrician out, the HVAC guys, like they don't want all those gory details. They're gonna freak out and like think something's wrong or panic about how we're executing it. But when I'm talking to my team and I'm talking to the GC, like they need all that information. And then you go up to a different level with the COO, the CEO. They want questions on how the project's going. They don't care what the plumber's doing. They don't care how I'm running the ductwork or who's doing what, where, and when. They just want to know the timeline of how it's getting done. So I've learned sometimes the hard ways. And just you got to know who you're talking to. You got to know who's there, and you got to change your tone and your message, when you're doing a certain task. And, um, like I said, I've had two separate people tell me that, and it was pretty interesting because they're, I've always thought of those two things together, being present and know your audience. And occasionally need to remind myself of both of those from time to time.
I remember about must be like must be 12 years ago now. To your point, I was in a facility and speaking to a couple of senior engineers, and I realized, unfortunately, about 8 to 9, maybe 10 minutes into the conversation, they were getting very glassy-eyed because I was doing way too much talking, and the facts had not been provided yet. I said, "Wow." So yeah, know your audience. It's so critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want we didn't really talk about everything we were going to discuss today, but there was one thing we talked about right before the show started here, Rob, and I want to ask you about this because we're in facility services or facilities management, and most of the people listening are. So I think everyone can relate, or for that matter, anybody can relate to a toilet seat. What's your story about toilet seats?
So Jay, about 4 years ago, a few kids came to my boss at the time, and they asked for feedback. They wanted to talk to facilities people any way they could about toilet seats. And these guys were from BU, and they were working with their friend who went to MIT. And they're now known as Cleana. They used to be Clean Seat, and their whole product, their idea that they were developing, was a toilet seat that stays up. And when you push it down, it stays down when you're sitting on it, and when you get up, it delays itself automatically for 40 to 43 seconds or whatever the time is. So, which is enough time to get your pants on, but tuck your shirt back in and walk away before it hits you in the butt on the way out. And they were in, going to BU and using the bathroom, and every time they go to a stall, they'd be, pee all over the seat, all kinds of, gross stuff we've all, experienced in public restrooms. And they decided they were gonna put get in a room and figure out how to do it. And so they wanted to talk to us every few months and get ideas as they were developing it. They had a team of people. Ultimately, they graduated from BU and MIT a couple years ago, and they had some nice backing, and so they were able to continue on their journey. They had a few iterations, but the magic's in the mechanism that lifts. So I don't know exactly how they figured it out, but I remember a few ways that it didn't work. So we let them do some testing in some of our stores early on. Typically, unisex bathroom or a men's room. It's ideal because you know what I mean. You're gonna stand up and use the toilet, and without a urinal nearby. And it's a really solid product. But these guys, Andy Chang and Kevin Tang, if you look them up on LinkedIn, they're called Clean with an A on the end. And they recently got acquired by Kohler, of all people. So they certainly made some headlines and got some people's attention. And every chance I get, I try to mention someone. I call it the magic toilet seat to get people excited about it. But
Love it.
I have one in my office. We have some in our stores. I have maybe 20 or 30 of them installed, and we're gonna do as many as we can do. Um, but I just really cool product. I think people should check out, and I think they're really nice guys. So
Did you say they almost went on Shark Tank too?
they did, yeah. I think they were lined up to go on Shark Tank, and then I was waiting for the call so I could watch them and tape the show. And they said, "No, we're not going to go. It's not going to work out." And they said they couldn't tell me exactly why at the time. And then ultimately, I got an email from them, announcing that they were acquired by Kohler. So these guys there's four of them in total. I dealt closely with two of them. And now they're, I think, all out in Wisconsin at their factory. And, I'm due to check in with them at the end of the month because they just want to update me because I think I was one of the early people that started talking to them. And I felt, really invested in their product because they had some good questions. They were just not facilities people. They didn't like who cleans the bathroom, how does the toilet get clean, when do you replace it, how much do you pay, how are they treated, like the abuse. They were interested in like the durability, all real questions that which were always funny because we're talking about a toilet seat and what do they cost, 20, $30 for a toilet, like a commercial grade toilet seat? Just throw it on, swap it out, you're done. But these guys really took it to the next level, and I think the product makes a difference. It really helps keep the bathroom that much cleaner, and it is truly a much cleaner seat to go on.
I'm sure your customers appreciate it. They're having a better experience for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. They had some QR codes explaining, like little stickers that would go above the toilet seat we put on, and you could scan the feedback. And we polled our stores too, and I'd go in there and be like, how's the toilet seat? And like that's kind of an awkward question to ask employees, but I urged them to scan the QR code so I wouldn't have to keep asking them like how was the toilet seat in the bathroom today. But I always got positive responses, and they all agreed that it was cleaner and it was nice and it was really good quality. um but yeah, really really cool product.
What a great story of being, entrepreneurial thinking and actually execution, right? Good for them. Good for them.
Yeah,
And great for the facilities world because they added convenience and a better experience for people too. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
absolutely.
Cool. Roach Bros recently won an award that was energy related, and I think we should touch on that because there are some other people who have been on the show that I think will relate to this too.
Yeah, Jay, recently we were Climate Leader Award for Mass Save in 2024. We were one of 19 companies that were voted from Mass Save as a climate leader in the state. Um, So we actually got to go to my refrigeration manager and someone from marketing and myself. We went to the State House and we got to accept the award in the flag room. So that was really cool. We got recognized, and so we've done a lot of energy saving projects over the last few years. And one of them being, in the supermarket world, if you have open air cases, putting doors on things is a big thing. So we started putting doors on some open air cases. It saves on electricity. The refrigeration racks they use less energy. You can adjust, your suction pressure. It saves on heat in the store. Less dehumidification. All that stuff it adds in. It's much more than the math on the spreadsheet. We've installed heat pumps in offices. We're even now looking into bigger heat pumps that go into seasons 4 units. Um, so yeah, we've been trying to grab all that mass save, all that energy money as much as we can, doing lighting conversions while it lasted. So apparently they took note, and we got a nice award out of the deal. So it's really good recognition. Super proud of my team for executing. It was a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, and our company for supporting us trying to, save that energy, with rising electricity costs, rising gas costs. We all can appreciate little ways to save money. And now this year we're trying to kick it up a notch and, um, get some of the big stuff.
Congrats. You should be very proud. And I know energy is a big passion of yours personally too. I think is, if I recall correctly, right?
Yep, I just converted my own house to heat pumps, and we made it through the entire winter without turning the gas heat on at all. And I live in a town with municipal electricity, so it was a no-brainer for me at less than 14 cents a kilowatt hour. But we even on the coldest days we've had this year, we didn't even flinch. My wife didn't complain. We didn't need to bundle up. It was, kept it at a nice 67, 68, and the thing ran like a champ. And, I have an electric car, charge at home, um, love all that stuff. So anything we can do you know, to save some energy or be a little more efficient, you know, is right in my wheelhouse.
That's reassuring about the heat pump too. I think a lot of people have that question, like, will it really get me through the winter? And apparently, obviously it does, right?
Yeah, I even posted, everybody's got their neighborhood Facebook page, and I even posted because everyone was asking, they saw him go in, and I posted on one day, I forget what it was. It was like, one of the days it was like 0 or -5 or something, one of those silly cold days. I was like, it cost me $9 to heat the whole house. And
Wow.
I use a sense monitor, and so that was probably even a higher number because it was capturing more things than just the heat pump. So at the high end, it was like $9 or $10 for the day. So it was, I don't know what the difference with the gas would have been, but I'm pretty sure it would have been more than $9.
Right.
So everyone's like, I can't believe it costs. I'm like, I'm monitoring it. You can have all the data you want, and it's just, you get people don't believe it. It's a little
And
easier to convince people of that than to drive an electric car. But
now you said so you're doing it at home, you're doing it at work. How many of your stores have this? I might have just missed that, but are heat pumps in all of your locations or
not quite. We have them in some of our IT closets. So as we're building new stores or we're doing remodels, we have some smaller offices throughout the building or break rooms or conference rooms. So as we need to replace like a rooftop unit, we look at it and decide, hey, can we do a heat pump here? We recently did, I don't remember the square footage, but it's probably like 2,000 square feet. And then so a little bit larger commercial grade, heat pump, nothing great, none of like the big VRFs yet, but in a whole mezzanine and a bakery. So if we can fit it in and the math works and we can heat and cool with it, we're going to do it. The incentives in this state are, I think, second to none, or they're really at the top in the country. So it's, as far as like executing a project and replacing, legacy equipment as it fails or as it gets close to, becoming end of life. I think it makes so much sense to look into it, especially if you got your electricity dialed in. And if you're onto renewables, forget it. You know what I mean? If you have your own solar in your building, like it just makes so much sense. We don't have solar, but I know a lot of people do.
great stuff. Great stuff. I'd like to talk about your your path or your journey. And the reason, let me kind of set this up a little bit. If anyone listening is considering going into facilities, or if you know someone who's considering going into facilities leadership or management or engineering, I'd really like Rob to expand on it, because you have a non-typical path, right? And we talked about it briefly before, but could you run us through where you started and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, Jay. Yeah, so I didn't go to any formal training. I know, like many of your guests, I did not go to Mass Maritime Academy, and after listening to almost a dozen podcasts, I feel like I should have. So if I go back in time, I might add that to my list. I went to UMass Lowell, but I wasn't an engineer. I majored in criminal justice with a minor in psych. Um, I just I wasn't a tradesman. I didn't learn a specific skill. I didn't turn a wrench for a living, but I always, sort of had an inkling that I wanted to, work with my hands. But when I was 15 years old, I worked at Fenway Park right out of eighth grade. Back in the day when Manny was there and Pedro, and they were just getting good in like the late 90s. I was slinging hot dogs I did that for 6 summers. So that got me into the food service concession world, and I sort of rode that train for a little bit.
I've got to ask you now. Sorry to interrupt, but were
No,
you the
no,
guy that walked around up and down the stands with the cooler on your shoulders?
no, no, I wasn't. I probably would have
Okay.
been in much better shape though if I was. No, I worked at one point almost every stand, either squeezing lemonade or cooking pizzas or the sausage carts or the steak and cheese. Like literally, they used to stick me all over the place. I was on the roof at one point, which was really cool. And then when I was, in college, I worked near the Songus Arena, and I worked for the concession company there, Boston Culinary Group, which is now Center Plate. Good Boston company. And I got a job there, and going into my junior year, they offered me the job as a concession manager. And I was like, well, I got school. And they're like, that's fine. And so I took that full time, and, uh, and I was sort of at a crossroads. I was going to be a police dispatcher in New Hampshire, and they didn't get back to me when they were supposed to. I took the test. Apparently, I did really well on their entrance test, and they didn't call me back when they said they would, and they offered me this job. So I took it as a concession manager, and that took me all over the country. I went to water country for a few summers up in New Hampshire. Then I moved out to Colorado with my two buddies, and I helped open an 8,000 seat hockey basketball arena. They built it from the ground up. It was a semi-pro hockey and basketball concerts. It was really, really cool experience to help put some of the equipment in place, set the whole building up, come up with the registers, the process, inventory,
What a cool
all that
project.
that crazy stuff. Yeah, that was certainly a notch on my belt there. I worked with some amazing, amazing people in the industry that have, crazy resumes with, some of the events they've done, like the Olympics and catered presidents' parties. And so really, really good experiences. And then eventually came back to manage URI in Ocean Beach Park in Connecticut. Tried to get out of the business for a little bit and some sales jobs, and then I did not like that. And then I got into, operations management in a service company. So servicing food service equipment, in Needham, and worked with another amazing bunch of people. And, one of the people that told me to know my audience,
Hmm.
that's where I met him and his wife, and worked with some awesome techs who had the patience to, explain to me how the equipment works, because I had worked with it on the other end, as, working concession stands. I knew how to work fryers and filter oil and clean ovens and clean hood fan filter, all that nasty stuff. Like I had hands-on experience. So I had a tiny bit of respect, but they at least let me tag along and learn all that. Um, and then I decided to move on from that. I wanted something with a better commute, and I, went over to convenience stores. Cumberland Farms was down the street, and they were growing their facilities department, and I worked with them for a few years, and then I got the nod to come over here to Roach Brothers, and this was something a little smaller. Companies at the time was 600 stores, doing a little bit of a merger. And so we expanded to 1,200 stores on top of that. So almost 1,800 and change across the country. That was really
That's
exciting to be a part
impressive.
of. We were with Service Channel as our CMMS platform. So I helped with a team of people, of course, to help roll that out to all the stores and get them on board. They hadn't been on anything before. Also great facilities team over there. They very, very deep, gas pumps and all that. That's another whole world that I never really could wrap my head around, but was really cool to experience. And then, Roach Brothers a little smaller, 20 locations, a lot of remodels, small team. You get to know people. I got to do really what I wanted to do, which was, go around, meet people, learn, and be able to have an impact. Again, not an engineer. I've learned more about heavy duty refrigeration racks in the last 5 years than I ever thought I'd imagine. Glycol skids and CO2 systems. That's another thing we do, getting with the EPA and energy, all that stuff. I work with a great refrigeration manager and he's, I ask him the same questions over and over. I'm like, wait a minute, what's the suction pressure supposed to be on the medium temp? And learn about compound racks and, all that stuff. So, no, not an engineer, not a tradesman, but somehow I got here and I'm in charge of a team that manages 20 grocery stores. I get to do new construction. We work with consultants. I'm by no means an expert, and I don't claim to be. I know who to ask and who to tap, and if I don't, I ask. Where do I find someone to talk to about this? And luckily, I have a really good community of people around me that I can call on, whether I'm here or anywhere else. I know that they'd pick up the phone, and they've got a lot of experience in the industry in general, not just supermarkets or convenience stores. I still talk to people I worked with in the past all the time, and hey, have you ever heard of this vendor? Have you ever heard of this manufacturer? What do you think about this? And you know, and you've
You
been
know, Rob, I just say this. It's that maybe you didn't go to a maritime academy or maybe you didn't have an engineering degree, but it certainly sounds like you developed it over the years just naturally through your experiences.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And I think I know just enough to be dangerous. But I try to make sure I don't break anything too heavy without someone on the phone with me. But yeah, it is. I don't have too many regrets, and I think I'm pretty happy with my path. Because I don't know how else I would have got to where I was, if I didn't do the same steps along the way. I try to, unfortunately, I do everything the hard way, like some people, and I find all the wrong ways to do it. And I always break the eggs. And, eventually I find a stride. And I think I finally, found a stride here. And it's in the right niche. You know what I mean? Again, awesome team. It's all about, a lot of people around you that want to do the work and that have that passion and that want to be there and want to be helpful, that want to strive to make everything better, not just it's broken, yeah, we got to fix it. It's like, well, why?
Sure.
Like, can we fix it better so it doesn't break every 6 months or every 2 years?
Hey, rock stars! If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Coludis, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Coludis is there to make hard work easy. Visit coludis.com today to get started. Well, thank you very much for walking us through your whole journey there, because it's not your whole journey, but that's a good segment of it. And it's inspiring for me to hear that. And I would hope for people who, like we started with, maybe people who are considering facilities management, but don't have that background either. And, you're a proof positive that you can do it if that's what you want to do. So it's great. You touched on a couple of topics that are pretty common on the show. CMMS. I don't know if it's, should we dig into that at all, and what Roach is, how does Roach capitalize on their CMMS? And what have you
Yeah,
learned?
for sure. Yeah, we can a
Okay.
little bit. So I've worked with the service channel platform in the last few roles at the service company I worked with. I worked on it as the provider side, where you have to check in, make sure the techs check in on the calls, put the notes in, and upload invoices and all that. And then at Cumberland Farms, like they were very, very heavily into it. My boss had worked for Service Channel previously before implementing it in that office. So he taught me a ton about it, and I picked up a lot, especially expanding those other stores. But as soon as I had the chance, I started tagging assets and logging assets. So a lot of people that I've talked to in the industry, like at different events and things, like everybody wants to make sure they have an asset inventory. And what tag do I use? How do I do this? So I went and, I listened to someone from Walmart speak at one of the conferences I was at, and he's like, we went through 15 or whatever different tags because they got to be outside, inside, hot, cold, and coolers. And he goes, I found this tag. This is the tag I want. So I called my rep. I said, I want whatever tag Walmart's buying. I was like, I don't, if it costs $1, it costs 50 cents, whatever. Just give me that tag that Walmart has, perfected. And so I started tagging equipment. I did a lot of it myself, and then we got someone to help us tag the refrigeration. And the issue we were having was the stores were putting in work orders on their computer. They didn't know that there was an app. So we introduced them to the mobile app. So now they don't have to stand at their computer. They can, and I adjusted the problem code so it was a little more relevant. I waited to learn the terminology that everybody's using, like a refrigerated case with the dough in it at the deli. They call it a spot tank, or they call it a Barker case. And a Barker case isn't really a Barker case. It's just the brand of the case from one manufacturer.
Hmm.
So, but that's what everybody calls it. So you gotta tune in your lists and your pull downs so it makes sense to the people using it. And then I took it a step further and we started asset tagging everything. So all they'd have to do is walk up, open the app, scan the QR code, and it fills in like 90% of what they need. And all they have to do is say, yeah, it's the no power, it's leaking, whatever it is, and they can add a picture and be on their way. So I think that was a huge piece, and there's more to it. We're doing, site inspections. You can set up templates to walk through and force people to take pictures, and you can open work orders as they're doing it without interrupting your your site inspection. So it's really important. I've heard other people talk about it. They have different platforms and all kind of same thing, but super important to keep track of your dollars spent, watch your budget. There's a budget tracking tool we use in it. But yeah, it's super important assets. That's been a huge value for us to know what we have and what's left, what's out there, model, serial number. I got pictures of everything in there.
Man, I love how you roll up your sleeves and dig into the details and the work. Like, and it sounds like you are truly maximizing the system.
Yeah.
And the one thing I cut, it's the Barker case, you said, right? It's not really a Barker case, but that's the brand.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love what you said after that. I took a note. It's makes sense so that it makes sense to the people who are using it, and you normalize a system and make it user friendly. So very important. And I'm sure it's played out well for you. It sounds like it has.
Yeah. When I got here, there was nobody really managing it. Like they would have to ask someone at Service Channel to upload. Hey, I want to change this, and they would just ask them, and then they'd upload the template. And I came from a world where I was baking the templates or I was adjusting the codes, and I was uploading it in a sandbox, testing it, making sure it was like not going to break anything, and then I dump it into just live. Like I would just do it. So I intentionally waited until I like went to all the stores, talked to some people, made sure that what I was going to change made sense. And, I tweaked it. I think I only, like, you never stop tweaking it, but I think it was only until like the last year or so, I really hadn't had to make too many updates other than things that we wanted to add that made sense. But it's been a long time since someone's asked me, like, hey, well, I don't understand what this is. And it's like, well, scan the tag. Oh, okay. And then now you don't need it, but yeah, it is important to know your audience because they started using all kinds of words that, like multi-deck, Barker case, spot tanks. And I'm like, well, they're up half of them the same thing. It's just, you know, uh,
What's been so I for the audience benefit, like what I think you just dropped a ton there. So what advice would you give someone who is starting out with a CMMS and nowhere near where you are? Like where do they start? How would they navigate?
so if they're working with something existing, you just look at all the pull downs or your problem codes or whatever you have that people are selecting is wrong. And, you run a report and look at what people are typing into the open field, and you kind of filter out what like they're actually typing in what the problem is. And then you get to know the people in the stores and the end users or the people in your office building or whoever it is, and see what they need out of it. Maybe there's something they're not doing because it's too hard or it's too difficult. And then if you're a venue. I know a lot of big box retail, they don't have a ton of assets, but HVAC units, automatic doors, all that stuff, tag your assets, make an asset list, put it in there. If it's got the ability, do it. Do your invoicing through it. See if it's got reporting. Tap into all the resources you have. I know in Service Channel, they have a whole thing called Service Channel University, and it has every possible thing, videos, breakdowns, walkthroughs, uh, you know, most of these platforms, have the resources. So you just got to find the time. It's very time consuming and, um, it struggles. We're trying to update a certain piece of it and comes down to me and one other person trying to go through all the gory details. And at the end of the day, you only get so many hours and you can only work so much extra. And it's just, sometimes you got to muddle through it. There's not always a consultant to just hand it off to. Sometimes you just got to you got to hammer it down and do it. But, um,
What I love is that you didn't do it in a vacuum. I think you said you went to every store. You wouldn't make a change until you went to every store. You knew your audience. You asked them what they needed or how they wanted it to look, feel, work, etc. Right?
mhm, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Another big topic on the show is safety for obvious reasons, and we talked a little bit about safety, and I want to key in on roof safety. You had a couple of points that I think you could bring up, Rob, that people could benefit from hearing.
Absolutely. So, like anybody else, we have, insurance folks that like to follow up and have their checklists and things like that. So, um, over the last, few years since I've been, in the facilities department here, we've, every quarter, I'd say they do 3 or 4 stores a year. They do checkups, and I have all these like 30-page reports with pictures. And one of the things that they're hot on is, rooftop equipment. If the wind blows it, it can topple over. It's not just, oh, it's going to follow your rooftop unit's going to topple over. It's going to blow and rip the roof and start rolling all the way down the roof and cause all that damage. Not just, oh, we're afraid it's going to blow over. Now, a lot of times people think it's crazy. You look at the numbers, you're like, look, no one, when was the last time a 7.5 ton unit blew off the roof, And the math is there. I'm sure somewhere it does. In Florida, you could probably make it happen, and maybe in Texas. But we've gone and started going store by store, and anything new we do, we followed their instructions and bolted down, exhaust fans, put screws through the curbs on the rooftop units, mini splits. That there's a whole number of different ways to secure the sleepers properly. All that stuff that maybe just was a lot of people. Almost any roof you go on, you could probably just see some 4x4s with some units screwed to it, but are they all really wrapped and screwed through the decks properly and sealed? So that's been an important focus of ours for the last few years, trying to go store by store. And anything new, it's like I said it in a construction meeting. I gave him a handout and I said, this is how I want the rooftop equipment secured, and everybody looked at me like I had 10 heads. And I
Hmm.
must have brought it up every 3 or 4 meetings, and they're like, yeah, 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 yeah. And but so I guess these are guys that work all over the place. They're not just working for me today for their first day. It's you know, safety first, but some of it sounds crazy, but sometimes you gotta just cross that, bridge and check that box. And
No, it makes sense. No, I appreciate you walking us through that as well. So, I shared with you that my mom lives in a community right behind your Marshfield Mass store, right? And I've watched the remodel, and it's impressive. You guys did a really, really nice job. It looks great, like the redesign of the configuration to a degree back near is it the catering area and the meals to go? It looks really, really good. And I didn't know if you'd like to. So well done. Do you want to touch on the construction projects a little bit further? I know we kind of touched on it early on, but
yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the kind words. My team loved it. They loved the positive feedback. That one came out pretty good. Not that we have too many that come out bad, but that one we're especially proud of. It was a nice store to remodel. It hadn't um, it hadn't had a ton of remodels in the past, which, as some construction folks know, that, when you got 2, 3 layers of things, or, if something was done quick, it's a little more difficult because you don't know what you're going to find. So here we were really, really lucky because we don't have a ton of that stuff. All new flooring, trying to pick the right flooring. We redesigned the space, kind of updated the colors. aesthetically inside with some new graphics, but redesigned catering. We updated, maybe 60-70% of the refrigeration cases on the sales floor. Like a lot of folks doing black and stainless now with the grays. But yeah, that was a really good project. It came out really well, came out pretty close to budget. And I'll attribute that to my project manager who kind of was there the whole time as I get distracted, from different things. So I can get back to my team. I got millwork, refrigeration, project management, loss prevention. Without all their hard work, it wouldn't have come out and the attention to detail. But yeah, we like to, refresh the stores from time to time, and that's kind of the path we're on.
I know you and I touched briefly on too, like how was it working with the architects in the design phase, and then how was it? How do you again about the energy focus? How do you capture the appropriate rebates and really capitalize upon that as well in this process?
So that's where it gets really interesting. We work with a really good architect and a consultant. And, once we start with the plans, the interesting phase is it probably is in many companies, working with all the different departments and the people that want to weigh in on what we want and how it's going to look. And again, with having done quite a few remodels in the last 4 or 5 years, we sort of like, oh, I want whatever was in that store. I want whatever we did there. I want whatever we did there. So it's a little more helpful. And then, as we get into, the energy savings and the rooftop equipment, we kind of try to spider that in where we can. In this case, we did add doors to the dairy section. We replaced some other cases that didn't have doors, but we look at the efficiencies of the new cases. If they're, 15, 16, 17 years old, the new cases coming in are much more efficient. So I have a pretty good relationship, or we do, with National Grid and Eversource. National Grid, they work with Clear Result, and the team over there a little more involved. They have a little more firepower in their office than Eversource, so they can help me a little more. I can give them a little more raw information. I can give them case cut sheets and say, hey, this is what I have. This is what I'm putting in. Is there anything for me? Can I get anything for the lighting? Can I get anything for dimming? I'm putting doors on these cases. I'm not replacing them. And they kick something back, and I fill out some of the paperwork. Eversource, I got to do a little bit more of it, but I can send it to him, and he says, yes, there's rebates for this. And, this is about what it is. Here's the form. I got to fill it out. So I'm always asking, the LED rebates kind of went out at the end of December last year. So unless you're doing dimming in Massachusetts, or you're changing into LEDs, the LED specific rebates are kind of gone. But if you're adding dimming specifically, or you just went back and retrofitted LEDs with dimming, there is some dollars there depending on, which utility you're with or which town. But so, we were able to capture, as much as we could last year before all those kind of went out. But yeah, architect, a little old school sometimes, but he gets it. And any chance we get, we try to, work in with the engineers and, see how we can make things more efficient, or can I fit some heat pumps in? They always laugh because I'm the heat pump. I'm like, heat pumps. Yes, we know, Rob, the rebates. You want the rebates.
Rob's the heat pump guy.
Yeah, I'm getting that name, let me tell you. But
All right, so now I'm going to ask you, based on your whole journey, everything we've discussed, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self, Rob? Knowing what you know today, what would you say to yourself at 20 years old?
probably know your audience, Jay.
Yep, right back
But
to it.
I definitely should have learned that a little earlier. But honestly, just keep an open mind. And I don't know if I'd try to give myself any advice to derail me. As as tough as it was in certain times, as miserable as I was at certain places and jobs, I think all of it contributed to getting me here today and gave me the knowledge base to develop the passion that I have, and do what I'm actually enjoying now. I don't, I'm not miserable every single day. It's hard. Like some days it's just really hard,
Mhm.
But I don't know if I'd give myself too much, other than just, keep at it, and it's going to be a hell of a ride.
Great stuff. All right, now you've You've displayed to us very clearly how hard and how much you work, and your team, of course. But who's Rob outside of Roach Bros? Like, what do you do? Do you have time to do anything else? Like, how do you spend your time? How do you have fun?
Answering emails and text messages. No, my wife and I enjoyed cruising. We try to get on 2 cruises a year. I finally caved after she, roped me into those, and it's just easier to say yes and just let her book whatever she wants and just tell me when to show up. So you know, as many of us are go 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 go, it took me quite a few years to learn how to just sit there and do nothing. So. Um, it was only the last like 3 or 4 cruises where I've really mastered the art of doing absolutely nothing. I've, sit down and, for like 8, 10 hours a day, just read a book, played a video game, and just, not even drank the whole day, just relaxed, sat in the sun, napped. There's really something to be said for it. And, you asked me a couple years ago and I would have been like, no, I can't. I'm too fidgety, can't sit down, got to be doing something. But I, past the 40-year-old mark. So maybe I finally hit the stride and, realize there is a balance somewhere out there when your phone can be off and there's no internet. Uh, and I
Where do
ride
you
motors.
cruise to?
Usually just the Caribbean for now. We're
Yep.
at some point, we're talking about the Alaskan cruise and maybe heading over to Europe. But we haven't done the Caribbean. We haven't really tapped everything out yet. Um, but
Cool.
just being on the boat, what I mean? Sometimes we don't even get off. We'll just sit there and, just really relax. And um, if we're not doing that, I ride motorcycles. I have a 2018 Harley Limited, and we used to ride with a group of people out of New Hampshire, uh, and we did the Cabot Trail. Nova Scotia. We did 9 days. We rode up through Quebec and all the way down and around. I forget, it was like over 5,000 miles or something silly.
My
So
God, that's a
my wife
serious
was on the
ride, Rob.
back, and yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was with 5 bikes, I think. We were with 5 other bikes, all couples, and it was pretty awesome. The Cabot Trail was absolutely beautiful, but the riding was terrible. We went on
Mm.
the 4th of July. This is a couple years ago. We went on the 4th of July thinking like the week, thinking like, oh, how could it possibly be cold in Canada in like in the middle of July? And it was snowing. We had every piece of clothing on that we had.
It
It
was
was
snowing in
icy. It was
July.
snowing in July on the Cabot Trail. It was miserable riding for like 2 days, and it didn't warm up until we got back into Maine. Like so, as far as like would I do it again? No. Like glad I
Mm.
did it. It's one of the top rides in the world that people come here to do. And then we did the back of the dragon a few years after that, opposite the tail of the dragon. That was a 7, 8 day, ride. So we don't do as many of those anymore. We don't hang out with those folks as much just because, we're over an hour away and we just sort of lost touch like people do. And my wife doesn't mind riding, but I think I don't know if she's done with the 7, 8 day living on a motorcycle days, but
That's a big
um,
commitment.
it is. We had some really good people we rode with, so I think that really helped, and she got along with them, and I did too, and so it really kind of sucked us in, and we've been out to New York and Lake Placid and rode out Lake George. We'll do Lake George trip, um, stuff like that. But yeah, yeah, pretty much that, and watch Law and Order on repeat. F1 racing, stuff like that. So.
Good for you, man. We did. I used to ride too, and we did the Lake George trip from where we live in Mass up there, and we picked a day when we didn't realize the weather was going to be so torrential, so we got soaked. But the worst part was we're going through the farmland up there. I think we're going through Vermont at the time, and we followed a manure truck. I mean, you can just imagine
Oh,
what we looked like when we got there.
I can't.
So,
I can't imagine.
yeah, it was pretty miserable, but it was. We still talk about it. That's why we
Yep.
do these things, right?
Yep. I think I still have dirt from this. I have red clay stuck in my bike somewhere from some dirt road. We didn't know it was a dirt road that we had to ride for like 30 miles. And, rooster tails all over the place, just mud, everybody in rain gear, frozen. Like, and everyone, we pulled into a gas station, like, you didn't ride on, I can't remember the route. They're like, you didn't ride down that road, did you? And there was like people's houses with outhouses. We were nowhere. Like, if something happened, we were nowhere. So yeah, yeah, you can't buy that kind of experience. You just
Mm-mm.
gotta be in the moment and do it and just
Just do it.
yeah.
Great stuff. Rob, thank you for spending so much time, sitting down with me and really educating me and everybody else listening. How would people get in touch with you if they wanted to ask you more questions or learn a bit more about, everything you shared or anything you shared?
Yeah, no, they can check me out on LinkedIn. I went to UMass Lowell. That usually pops up at the top for some reason. I think it's Rob J. Cox is the abbreviated at the end of LinkedIn. I can give you the link. But yeah, I'm usually pretty good with that. I'll make sure I turn on my alerts if anybody needs anything or has any questions.
Outstanding. Well, I can't thank you enough, Rob. Thank you for taking the time, for sharing everything personally and professionally about yourself. And it was a great experience to sit down and talk with you today.
Yeah, it was really great being here, Jay, especially after listening to a whole bunch of your shows. I'm glad I could join you.
Thanks, man. And thanks to everyone listening. If you liked the show today, if you learned something, if you laughed, please tell somebody else about the show. This has been another great episode of Facility Rockstars, and we'll catch everyone next time. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.